they're up there, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we don't have anybody on yet, but we're going to go ahead and get started.
Okay, well,
Bill Gustafson just on here.
Okay.
good. Well, for the interest there, we'll just take a couple minutes. Let's go ahead and go around the table, make sure we have a few introductions, some people we haven't seen in a while, and kind of just do a little bit of introduction. My name's Tom Ashby, and I'm the chair of the Legislative Task Force.
I'm Bob Carlock, and I'm the CFO at Red Lake College. Sandy Moldovan, with CGN.
Greg Sutton with Tech Services.
I'm Jessica Kelly. I'm proxy for John Colleton with UPS.
Dave Stefflin with Madison County. I'm the Executive Director of the Employment Training Department.
Don D. Davalier, recently retired from John Deere.
We're all envious, too. Yeah. We have anybody online? Have anyone online?
Nobody's online. Lisa Jones with DCEO.
Oh, wow. Was it a question this morning or what?
It might have been. It might have been.
And we all have Mark, too, as well, with us. Mark. Actually, I want to thank Mark for getting all of our materials together and setting everything up here. And we're trying to make these a quick meeting, but we have a lot of things to go over. Teresa should be joining us very soon, and as well as Bob Sheets. I think he's feeding money to the meter. But we've got a lot of important things going on today, and I just want to thank everyone for, first of all, most importantly, just attending and being part of this. But this has been a very, very busy time in the past. We had some good reports today we'll be bringing up. I think Teresa and Bob had a phenomenal visit to D.C. and talking to the different legislators. We had some action going on from the House on the bills that are being passed, the reauthorization, but more importantly, the amount of funding that's going to be initiated with it. So the main thing we're still trying to push is the flexibility aspect, and I think that I'll let them talk a little bit about it. We seem to be headed in the right direction by all indications from the legislators that we talk to and the staff members itself. As long as it remains to be employer-driven, and the flexibility is there to do that, that seems to be something that has their ear. I think there still has problems with the bureaucracy of how these programs are done, and we try to keep ours more simplistic and say it's employer-driven. We kind of make it that way, and we can work those other elements out as we go along. And so, but we do know that it has to be addressed sometime, someplace. But if we continue with the theme, I think we have their ear, and basically we had some very, very favorable reception. Later on, we'll also be showing you some letters that we sent to Senator Durbin. You'll be able to, Mark will bring it up to you and show it to you, but more importantly, you'll be able to download it to you as well. And this is after our initial visit we had in December, talking to Senator Durbin, and he asked us to at least come up with some models. And then we also talked to Senator Kirk, to the staff too as well, and through those conversations we had, he also agreed to go on board with us too as well, with the legislative task force we have. Very important just because of the aspects of the Illinois delegation, and we're doing that. We remain in contact with Congressman Shimkus' office, as being one of the senior members we have in the House now, to also reflect, workforce development. We have some new visits we're going to be doing from the Metro East area, as well as Rodney Davis, who just took over in Champaign. So we have some conversation with him. But I think it's very important to note that we have an effective message getting out there. We're going to have to monitor it as we go along, but the one thing we did still say is they still want models. And the one thing I've come through this meeting today is, especially from the private side, is basically we got to have business plate models.
Well, it's interesting. We listened to the first hearing that they held on a piece of legislation we're going to be talking about later that came out of the House. It's called the Skills Act, which is the WIA reauthorization bill for the Republicans, 803. And during that hearing, Representative Guthrie, there was a gentleman from Florida that was testifying, and he wanted to know, he said, give me a specific example. So he wanted to know the nitty-gritty, like what is it about the funding stream and that makes it inflexible for you not to serve your workers. And so he did a really nice job of talking about a company that they had in Daytona that had 40, that they were agreeing to train 40 CNC machinists, but they really wanted to train 100 more, but there wasn't the funding available. So, yeah.
There may be someone on. I had people muted on the line, so you might want to see if anyone's on the phone.
Do we have anyone got online?
Yeah, it's Gideon Bluestein with IDES.
Hi, Gideon.
Hi, Gideon.
Hello.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I don't know if you heard me. I'm Phil Gustafson, St. Mary's Good Samaritan in Mount Vernon.
Great. Hi,
Hey, Phil. How you doing?
Good, thanks.
Tom Ashby.
Hi, Tom.
How you doing, bud?
You know, on the downside, though, what he didn't do is talk about how the 15% could have helped. But still, the point is, they really are wanting those concrete examples of what prohibited you from training those folks.
So it's important to note that not only is this an important model we have to have and availability of those cases that we do have. I know that UPS had some models they're going to share with us as well, you know, how they do the educational programs, how to do the training. That's important to note. I think we also have to look at the importance of the subcommittee itself, and that's the, you know, the public-private partnership, the subcommittee of it, because that has going to be the driving force for the legislative part. Because like we said before, and I'm repeating myself, when we have these legislative visits, they really don't want to see a Lisa or anyone else. They want to see those employers in the room. And that's what they really want to see. That's who they want to talk to. And they want to say, how can we address your needs? How is this going to be better for you? So if we had those type of models, availability for us, that's what we've got to have before we can do the congressional aspect of it. So, I mean, we continue to do that, and I think Bob has reflected that too as well, you know, what we need. But I just really want to stress to you that, I don't know, have you received any templates from anyone?
Yeah, we have. We're going to talk about those in a little bit.
Okay, very good, very good. So basically that we're going to have, after this meeting, we're going to have a short subcommittee about the importance of how we keep the public-private partnership, some models we're looking at. I think Bob's going to share some with us too as well on the continuation of it, how you keep them involved, how it's driven. You know, we go back to the old days, and Bob and I nod our head on the old days, you know, it was employer-driven, how it was originated, and some of the thought process to how those things were actually arrived. And I think that's one of the things we have to look at, because unless they're vested, it's not going to work. And I think we all understand that.
We just got done with the National Association of Workforce Boards, so they were flooded. We saw Davis, Shimkus, and Inyard's office while we were out there. And the one thing that I think didn't get said, but I think is understood, is that we're going to look at a whole different type of board. And we encourage them to take a look at 66% or 2/3 of it being business, to take the mandated partners off and make it more of that employer-driven. You've got the CEO on the other side, the chief elected official, who can sort of cover some of those other areas. And it doesn't mean you can't put people on, but it was well received. And my board's proactive, as I know a number of them are. We'll actually sit down with Rodney Davis and John Shimkus and Bill Inyard, with people who know them and who have financed their campaigns and who have the ability to influence more so than like myself. I mean, I'm staff. I've got a vested interest. It's better if they don't hear from me at all.
That's right.
So I think the IWP, the Illinois Workforce Partnership, is going to continue that. I brought along some samples of the materials that we took, and we're staying above the fray. We're not getting involved with the minute details. What we feel is important is to push for some very general items, 2 or 3, and nothing more than that, because you go in, you bog them down in details, and they walk out of the room shaking their head.
Okay. Well, the bottom line is, and I have to agree with you, the board makeup is an important piece of it, and how it's actually done. I mean, you know, with the county boards and then the appointees, that type of process. I think that's an excellent idea, you know, 66% of them being from the business sector, because that's, well, I mean, before that's usually that'd be your model groups that you had, and they actually got together and they had little sessions and study groups and stuff like that. Okay, where we're going to be. So they're addressing the needs before they even came, you know, and that type of situation. But plus, more importantly, you have them involved from the business perspective, what they're going to have. So you got to share the plans that they are going to be utilizing as well, too. But I think that's an excellent idea about that from the very, very beginning. We get that on there. So see the agenda basically we have is a discussion of business cases, a congressional update. We're going to talk about the visits, legislative update's very, very important, and we can take care of that. And we'll just basically then kind of reflect on what we're going to be telling the full board today, the Workforce Investment Board, kind of give them an update report. And mainly that I think a lot of it will be compromised of the, actually the legislative update will be the most important aspect of it. So I think that, Bob, is there anything you want to talk about on the private sector subcommittees or anything else?
Well, you want to go back to the business case first, update on
Well, I do, but I want to approve the minutes first.
Oh. So moved, so moved.
Thank you.
We'll get those approved, all right.
Well, these are such a pain in the butt for me that I'm going to make sure that...
It's all about you.
It is all... All right.
Welcome to my world, Bob.
Okay, all right, so approved. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, now we can talk about the business
Business cases.
Okay. We got a good response from everyone. We had a total of 47 templates.
Wow.
Plus ideas, so I think we're looking at about 50 templates. A lot of manufacturing, a lot of healthcare, a few technology. The private sector subcommittee is going to kind of wade through all those today. Incumbent worker was the big one. Mary Rose, God bless her soul, sent us 37.
Wow.
So she took it to heart, and they're good ones. We had one that was just focused on disabilities, a couple that were just aimed at strengthening communication between education and industry placements. I think one of the things that we really need to look at is only 6 of the examples that we got had more than 2 partners. So they're pretty specific, just like
the jury people did, because I was with...
yeah, I have Steve Stewart.
I've got... He has 4
yeah.
I was with him yesterday, and he was going to... they're going to resubmit theirs to include more partners, too.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah, because well, that's good, because they already had a lot of partners on that.
It's even more now. So
wow. Okay.
They'll resubmit it.
Okay. All right, so I think we've got a good start.
Are we able to put them into the different groups like transportation, manufacturing?
And yes, we have them sorted out like that.
Good. And so we have healthcare and all that we're addressing it.
Yep. Yes, and I think the other thing that we need to look at, it didn't seem like we had a lot of challenges, or the ones that submitted didn't display a lot of challenges, and while that's a good thing, that's also a bad thing, because I think we need the challenges to demonstrate what we need changed in the law. And we need to be able to articulate that. So we want to kind of think through how we're going to do that.
But a lot of those were used with statewide funds that have less restrictions than local funds.
Right.
That may be enough.
And that might be, exactly.
Well, the other message that we tried to take to them was they pass a bill. We don't want DOL writing another bill on top of it through their rules and regs process.
Exactly.
And that got a favorable listen, too, because I think when we take a look at incumbent worker training and what's happened in the last few years,
right.
We've moved way off of center on that issue, and it's hurt us overall.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, we met with Congress, and we'll talk about in the legislative update, but we did meet with Congressman Rush's staff and talked, and they were very interested in incumbent worker and also the waiver process, which I thought was interesting, and how DOL needs to do a better job of taking a look at those waivers. Because I think there's 5 waivers that like over 40 states have. And so if you've got 40 states that are requesting to do something, which for example one is a sliding scale for OJT reimbursement rate, then you've made a bad policy, or they don't have enough flexibility to place people in jobs. So they're certainly listening, I think.
It's possible maybe to just get a little write-up, a summary of the ones we have and fill it in by sector, partners, and then districts, like legislative districts, to kind of see if we have good enough coverage.
Right.
Yeah. We have it.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. I just didn't want to share it because I don't have it all done today. We got some last-minute ones, so I didn't want to give a half-done.
So basically you'll have district, you'll have sector, and that'd be great. That'd be very good.
Yeah, we have a table, and we'll look at it at the subcommittee, but we have it, project name, description, we have the grant amount, and actually if it's more than just WIA, we're noting that, how many were served, if they got credentials, who their partners were, and any challenges in the sector. So, okay. All right, anything else we want to have a discussion on around the business aspect of it before we...
Greg?
Questions?
I was going to save some comments for the legislative visits, but yeah, as far as the business case, if there are, for example, the ones that we partnered with, a challenge to us is something we didn't overcome.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking for us to say, you know, what were some of the things that we had to overcome, well, you know, related to, you know, visa eligibility or, you know, rules and regulations, it might be helpful to us to identify where some of those target areas are that the department is interested in focusing on, because we may have had that as something we had to deal with, but we didn't see it as a challenge because we fixed it, right?
Right. Okay.
Very good. Okay, who wants to talk about the question?
Well, I can talk a little bit about that. And then Gideon, I don't...
Yeah, I was going to say, Gideon,
Gideon can talk, if you wouldn't mind, from the IDS perspective. In just a minute, what we're hearing is that WIA in Illinois is going to take about a $5.5 million hit. How that's going to look, we don't know. It was interesting. We participated in 2 different state calls earlier this week, and one was with DOL, and they were saying that they're going to, the TEGL, and I'll let Gideon talk about this, for the UI has come out about how they're going to, the impact of sequestration on that. But on the WIA side, they're still struggling with what they're going to do. But DOL in the morning was saying that the impact was going to be all up front, that sequestration dollars had to come off the top. But yet in the afternoon we heard opposite of that they were trying to figure out how to lessen the burden and spread out the impact of the sequestration. So we're waiting for a TEGL to come out that's going to tell us what our actual dollar amount is that we're going to lose. I know that the other thing that they said was there is going to be some training notice that kind of gives us a heads up so people can start planning for that.
Is that for this year?
It's for next
starting
year,
1 July.
right. They're not going to take back any funds that we've already received.
Okay, that's good news.
Yeah, they're not going to take back any money we've received. It's just going to be on the money that's coming forward. However, the problem will be if they take it on that first installment allotment that's only 3 months, that's going to kill people. Because if they take
That's what they're rethinking.
That's what they're rethinking, or seeing if they can get around. So, and Gideon, do you want to talk about it from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't have that much more detail to share. We don't have a whole lot of concrete direction from DOL. The largest impact we know on the front end, which is kind of isn't so relevant to the IWIB, but I think is worth mentioning, is you know, our concern is, do we pay out unemployment insurance benefits that then have to get clawed back? So I know the UI side of things, they've been working really closely with DOL to try and get clarification. We've been noticing people, letting them know that there's the chance of that. And then it's just really unclear in terms of the Wagner-Pfizer and workforce development side, kind of what the impact is going to be. But I will say, you know, couldn't come at a worse time with our funding already being cut because of the unemployment rate going down. We had an $8 million increase in our health care costs, and you know, just a lot of costs we're already trying to take into account. So the challenge is also, you know, if there's a cut that needs to be sort of amortized for all of FY13, there's a very short time frame that needs to fit into. So we're trying to figure out, you know, just what the impact is going to be, and you know, work around it as best as possible.
Well, Gideon, I'm going to put you on the spot. I know that I was one of the communities that had this office closed. Is this going to be part of your program, or are you going to actually close a lot of your IDS offices in the state and you just mainly go to online and call centers to take care of the problems with it? Or what is your thinking, or what is your strategy that you think with the shortfall of money that you have and how you have to address it through personnel costs and that, what is the direction that IDS is looking at?
I mean, I think there's a lot of options on the table, and until we get a little bit more clarification from DOL, I think it would be kind of maybe a little reckless to throw all those options out on the table. But I mean, what I can say is the offices that have already been announced that we're closing, unfortunately, are still being consolidated because we're only standing to lose more money. We're not getting any back. So, you know, we internally have been looking at a lot of options where we can make up for those costs. In fact, you know, but I think the main thing is that we want to continue to improve our service delivery even as, you know, maybe that local brick and mortar presence goes away. For example, I'm driving to Rochelle right now to speak to 25 businesses that are concerned about the DeKalb office closing. And I'm going to talk to them about, you know, just the continuity and improvement in service that we believe we can bring despite the fact that, you know, the offices are being consolidated.
Well, I'm just bringing it up as a theme of a point. You know, we are partners basically in workforce development, and your offices are an integral part of how we make sure we do delivery of development training and stuff like that, and that it just be kept abreast of that, because I think that it's important to note that, you know, if it's the style of how we're going to handle claims and that type of thing, and how the mainstream, I mean, that's one of the things that we talked about was the duplication of efforts, that we do have a clear avenue for those individuals. And I know just in Southern Illinois, it's a lot of problems sometimes when people get online and that type of thing. The call centers, of the success rates that you have meeting those concerns as well. So, I mean, all I'm saying is it dumps right back to us trying to satisfy the legislators that make sure we have some kind of a plan in place.
Totally agree.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments about the trees? We're talking about the sequestration impact right now.
No, Jay did a great job in D.C. explaining the issues. Ours is less immediate, but still significant. 5% off the top.
Okay.
There's no rosy forecast to it. That's the whole thing
Right,
about it.
right.
And I'm just saying is we have to face it might happen. We got to know how we're going to address it, because it'll be part of a problem. We can't expect to do legislation if it's going to be affecting IDS and how they do their job, because they're going to say, what about this element of it? So we have to be kind of working with them to make sure we're on the same page, and that's what I'm trying to stress in this meeting. Okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to make sure that point's out there, because otherwise it's unsuccessful and everything, because then we get back to the same square root run again, you know, because we're duplication of efforts that are, you know, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, all right, any other questions on this question? All right, we're going to have some upcoming visits. You want to bring us up to date on that?
Yeah, March 26th, we're going to meet with Representative Foster. April 1st, Brad Schneider. I know that Lizbeth is also working on dates with, we were supposed to meet with Congresswoman Duckworth as well, but she had to cancel, and we're looking at the first part of April for a reschedule for her. And then our other two top ones that we're trying to get scheduled are with, as Tom mentioned earlier, Davis and Congressman Enyart. So, and then we have, I think, 3 or 4. Gideon, don't we have after that 3 or 4 left?
Yeah, I don't know the precise ones off the top of my head, but the list you went through is accurate. We've been in touch with all of those offices. Really, it's just a matter of them giving us a solid date. And, but, you know, contact is made. Elizabeth follows up multiple times weekly. So just a matter of getting confirmation from them.
Yeah, we have Bustos. Yeah, she's one of them. I think, you know what, she might be it. Lipinski. And I think that might, maybe there's only a couple more that we have after that.
Right.
Okay.
Well, Dave, you could probably comment on Davis and them. I mean, basically, I think they're going to pretty well be on board, but we just haven't had the formal sit down with them. I'm sure you probably already have, and maybe you can bring us up to date.
Well, our past chair is actually going to have him in his home in about a week, so I'm going over that night. And in terms of he had a relationship with or had the opportunity to have a relationship with Jerry Costello before. I think he's going to be on board. He understands the local issues. He understands it from a bigger perspective, coming from a military background.
I think he had taught at Southwest.
Yes, he did.
For a few
He
years,
did.
too.
Well, and the other thing is, in our area, there's going to be a lot of contact between my current chair and him. He's, because of BRAC and what's coming up in Scott Air Force Base, I mean, that's a huge economic engine, and they've already asked some questions about some of the decisions the Air Force has made, so they'll be working closely together. I don't see either one of them being a problem.
Well, matter of fact, I would have to say the Congressman, I was very, very happy talking to the Chief of Staff, and they're going to utilize Rend Lake College, and he's actually going to do like a little model training there, what they do with Continental Tire and steel companies and that type of situation, so he can come in and see firsthand. So it kind of takes care of a twofold type reason. We can kind of bring him up to date, and we can kind of complete the public-private partnership thing in action, and also the role of the community college, which he has a strong interest in as well.
As soon as we get our workforce innovation grant, and that'll be soon, I'm sure, those models working with the community colleges, it should be something we ought to highlight all across the state, all these reps.
I think that's one of the things we'll be bringing up in the legislative update with Lisa and Bob and Therese on what they have there. But so we'll continue with the visits, and that we're going to be on board with you guys for Rend Lake hosting Congressman.
Yes.
We can't wait. I mean,
Okay.
we're ready to go.
Okay.
Right, yeah, we're just listening
to do it.
on that. So,
Okay. Legislative update.
Before we move off on that,
Sure, please do.
couple of comments, and it may have just been the half a dozen visits that I participated in, and maybe it was just me. But if we really want the private sector to be heard, they can't be drowned out by all the other voices that were coming to the table, non-private sector voices, and they need to be prepped. Most of the visits I was with, the business people didn't even know why they were there. They were asked at the last minute to come to a meeting. They did it as a courtesy to who was asking them, and they didn't have a message, a clear message. So there was rambling that went on. There was not, off-topic types of things, and if you got a limited amount of time, and if you got a message you want to hear, they need to be prepped, and you probably need to have, again, the ones that I went to, there were quite a few people, and everyone vying to try to get their voice heard, and again, there were some non-private sector folks that dominated. I can think of one where they talked for over an hour, and it just went on and on and on about stuff that wasn't germane. So again, I don't know if there's the opportunity to prep that private sector voice so that they know what the message is that needs to be heard, and can state that, as well as that we're not at, we have one private sector voice saying one thing and another saying something totally different, like we really need the help, and someone else saying no, we don't. That's difficult.
right. So, you guys are the business folks. Are we thinking that maybe we need like a 5-minute because I know on our businesses, we set Mary Rose talking points. Bob and I worked on talking points for Mary Rose's businesses. But maybe we need to do a little bit more.
I was thinking about what we do is we ought to use the framework of the case materials.
Exactly. Template is that.
So we go back and forth with the businesses we've identified.
Right.
So we write up their case they're speaking from, because many of them have a lot of things going on, and we want you to talk about this case. We'll work with them on the case description that they helped write up, and then put some 2 or 3 talking points on the top of the email for the case, send out the case in advance, and that'll structure the conversations better.
Yeah, and I think it has to be well prepped, not 5 minutes before the
Okay,
meeting.
and that's fine.
I was thinking if they sign off in their case, then they're prepped. They're on top of it because they've helped write the case. And then if we have that as the handout that we leave people with, the staff, they were taking notes. A lot of the staff were taking notes, not listening.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so if we basically say, and by the way, what we're going to talk about today is these examples are written up in your packet, then the individual can talk for a very few minutes and get to the point real fast, and then we make that the first, and then anybody else in the room, any time left, we can talk about the other thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, as you said, if we follow that business case format, that anybody then should be able to to present that. What you do have though
Because
is
also I was noticing some of these staff were like drinking from a fire hose.
yeah.
And so like they were just seeing all this stuff and all those words flying around, and they were writing every little note down.
Yeah.
And you could just tell it was just
Right.
writing the exact words down they were trying to say. And,
Yeah.
and I think it'd be better to say is, and by the way, what we're going to talk about today is also written up in your packet.
Right.
You gotta be careful with that though, because a lot of times the staff will take that and they won't look at it again.
Okay.
If you go to the Shock's office and you go look at some of the desk of the staff, you can't even see people. I mean, there's paper just stacked up to the ceiling. I think one,
The Bob Sheets model.
the Bob Sheets model. I think one thing that is really important.
It's a little vicious, a little turn, people are turning here.
I'd say we're Bob.
Me either.
When we did, Teresa was there, and she made a very clear case and did a very good job of outlining, and then turned it to the private sector people were there and basically got their confirmation. And their, since they were the ones that were probably writing the checks to him, he was listening to them just the fact of who they were. And I think it's more important, I think the thing I saw is that quantity is not a big deal. It's quality. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, if you can have the CEO of UPS, or we had the CEO of XL Foundry there, and that was quality, because that guy's a big check writer and is very, very successful. But you got to be careful, like you said, because what they want to do is take that opportunity to do other things, because they have their congressmen in their sights, and you got to be very, very careful with them. And what we should have done, and if we could have gotten into a room prior to the meeting and said, we know you all have things you probably want to talk about. And there was a couple of people went on to, what was it,
Staffing?
something, I don't know where she went totally berserk in the meeting, way off course. What you have to say to them is, we have a focus here. If you want to have something else go on, set another meeting, but please, we have 40 minutes or whatever, please stay on point with this for us.
So you're suggesting maybe have somebody set it up in 5 minutes like Teresa did,
Yeah.
and then go to the business cases.
Right, she did it, she set it up and she had the bullseye lined up. It was very clear why we were there, what we were doing, and then the business cases supported that premise.
That's a great idea.
And I think that's important. And you or Teresa or somebody who's knowledgeable about it should be the one that sets it up, because no matter how good the business people are, they don't
I think that's a great format. To have a setup
Well, I think that kind of reinforces a point. The businesses aren't going to know the sort of bureaucratic acronym funding streams, and that's kind of the point. They should be happy working with us, and they don't ever have to really know the details of which funding stream causes what dollar amounts to come and benefit them. And so I think that model of having, the bureaucrat sort of set it up in 5 minutes and then have the businesses speak plainly about what their experience has been, I think that's probably the most effective, because if everybody's talking about we and Wagner Pizer and OJT, the congressperson and their staff is going to totally not follow.
Well, yeah, that's the point. The guy from XL said, we have 52 welding jobs we cannot fill, and if we had some extra resources, we could fill those jobs tomorrow, and they are head of household jobs. They're living wage jobs. And it's really, it came from somebody who was experiencing the pain of that. And so I think if we could do that, and there's a lot of, almost at all these meetings, there's somebody from the organization, you or Teresa, or Lisa, or somebody could be there that.
Yeah, and actually Steve, who's on this committee, is this HR guy, HR manager, and he was the one who submitted the case, which is going to be that case.
Yeah, well, that's real. I mean, it's
Well, and he's taking the leadership role in the manufacturing exchange too, so it's good. And I think that's great. I would like to limit the amount of government people there, though. I think maybe 2 from each agency would be great.
absolutely.
And no more than that. 1 or 2 from DCO, 1 or 2 from IDS.
But you got to limit the number of people in the room.
Right.
That was the other problem. We filled the room.
Well,
There were people standing in the room, and there were people that were there from some government agencies that,
But I think, back to Grace's point, if we had worked with the business before, we would only need 1 person from DCO and 1 from IDS to be in the room. Because we'd already done our staff workup.
I agree. I totally agree with that. And really, you need to limit the number of private sector. If you've got 3 or 4, it's more about quality. I mean, the cupcake lady didn't need to be there.
Was that particular for Congressman Schock's meeting, or which? I'm sorry, this is Jay Rowell. I've been having a lot of trouble getting on the phone, so you guys could hear me.
No, I think
it's probably true of all of them, but the one that I was participating in was Congressman Schock's meeting.
Yeah. Because I think we've had some where there was 1 or just maybe 2 government people, and then some where we had a lot more, and some where we've had 3 or 4 targeted business, and other ones like Jan Schakowsky's. I think we must have had 20 business and workers there. So I agree, like a little more consistency on that would probably be good.
That's a good point.
Though, I would say in many cases you want to have someone from the local board there, though, that can answer questions. What happened last time I met with Shimkus is he actually called D.C. and got his staff on the line, and we had a rep from ConocoPhillips at the time, now just Phillips, 66. Shimkus is on the Energy Committee chair, so that made sense. And when they talk about what was going on, I'm hoping we get the new guy over there because he actually took part in a program when they shut down Premcor, another refinery, and knows what the services were like on both sides, either in a growing operation or one that's in decline. And that resonated with him because those were jobs that he knew about, and I think that's helpful.
So we're all in agreement basically that we'll have a spokesperson do the introductory aspect of the business people, which are prepped, and they have a template they can use of the examples we have. Maybe, if anything, we can have different sectors be represented from that to reach the 5 categories that we have, and then finally another spokesman just finish it up and then call it that and keep it concise at that point. So basically we're talking about 2 different speakers, beginning and end, and then the business people 2 or 3, and leave it at that.
Yep.
All right, so we'll kind of use that as a model.
Agreed.
And use the template for the private sector cases, to use that as a template for them to do. That way it preps them with it.
Have a 1-pager on each business case.
Absolutely. I think it's a great idea.
That's a great idea. But again, simplicity.
Exactly.
These people are overwhelmed with paper.
Right.
We do the case, and we'll have the contact information for the businesses there.
They'll keep that.
And we have had a one-sheeter on there with some of the information on the local businesses at some of these past meetings, and then with some of the generalized issues. I think the packet over time has expanded. I mean, maybe we just go with that one piece of paper that we have.
Good. All right, any other questions? Greg, good comments. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, and just to follow up on one of the things Sandy said real quick, I think if we can, in our business case, if we can focus on the economic outcome or whether it's number of jobs, like you said, that are paying, good wages or return on investment for every $1, there's X dollars of return. I think that helps sum things up for why it's important to invest in this area.
Well, I think that comes back to the last speaker. He has as a final viewpoint. Everything else is the return of the dollars that you have and how much it is to the investments and stuff like that we can have that. So that's the ending speaker says here is the end of it, and that's kind of do the summation of it.
Yep. And when it boils down to it, if you can put 50 more people to work, the 50 more voters are gonna vote for this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, that, you know, it's check writers and voters. In our case, there was something came up where there might have been a TV, an TV interview, and the congressman just jumped on it. It was like this, oh yeah, I can do that. So, I mean, I think you gotta realize.
It was Steve.
Yeah, we gotta realize, you know, really what one of their interests is, that's being
Absolutely.
reelected.
That's good.
So,
Very good.
Okay, next we have the
Hey,
legislative
Tom?
update. Yes, I'm sorry, Jay, go ahead.
Tom, sorry, would you, if you don't mind, I was having some, I could hear you guys, but you couldn't hear me. I have a little more of an update on the sequester and how it impacts us.
Okay, great, please, go ahead.
Yeah, so essentially, unfortunately, unlike how they're going to impact the WIA programs, the sequester for IDS programs goes backwards to the beginning of the federal fiscal year. And they are going to be cutting our operational funding by 5.3%. And then in addition, we have to cut claimants' benefits by 10%. Starting March 31st to the end of the federal fiscal year in October. USDOL has made numerous programmatic requirements to us. I'm sure we're all shocked to hear that, to implement that 10% cut. And Illinois, like a number of other states, will probably be unable to basically redo how we pay extended benefits, until about June. Meaning that claimants from June forward will receive more like a 35% cut in their weekly benefit amount. So this will have a pretty dramatic impact for extended benefit claimants, and then in addition, for our own operations, we have to, it's 5% cut, roughly $10 million, but we now, if we were able to start cuts to our operations budget today, we'd only have 6 months to recoup that $10 million. And so consolidations and layoffs and other reductions take months to effectuate. So in reality, IDS will probably have about 2 months to recoup the $10 million we're supposed to recover for this entire federal fiscal year going back to October 1st. So, we are having ongoing conversations with the U.S. Department of Labor about some other alternatives and are scheduling a meeting with AFSCME about how we can recover this money. An additional challenge is the bargaining unit agreement that was just concluded, which will require us to pay $2 million in raises going back to July 1st of 2012, and then next year another $7.3 million. So this is going to be a real challenge for us, and I know, Tom, as you mentioned, are we going to continue to consolidate local offices and make other changes like that? At this point, I really don't see any other alternative to doing more of that, moving more and more to an internet and telephone-based delivery model for unemployment insurance in Illinois. It's too early to say what the plan is with any, absolutely though. But in terms of Wagner-Peyser, which is what's most related to this WIA conversation, USDOL has still not provided us any guidance with what the cut will be. So we're assuming it will be 5% over the entire fiscal year, so going back to October, with then only 6 months to recover that money, meaning it's more of a 10% cut over the remaining 6 months. So we'll have to, hopefully they'll provide us guidance on that, and also our veterans programs at some point, but we haven't received what their plan is for that. So we'll keep you posted on that as soon as we learn anything.
Well, Jay, I just wouldn't try to put you on the spot, but you're just such an integral part of the workforce training development we have in the state of Illinois, and basically you're a component, a necessary component we have, and I'm just trying to, if we're going to do legislative updates, you're part of the process as well, and I'm just going to, if we're changing the model or the looking of it, I know that you have very bleak operational aspects right now. I mean, I don't want to be in your shoes, although
me neither.
That's better. Running the city isn't too much better when you face huge deficits and stuff. I've got to know a few things about this, but no, I just want to say that we offer our help, and from a legislative point, when we make sure that we are partners in this whole process, because this goes back to the original thing, the theme we had when we talked about this, is the public-private partnerships we're all partners. It might be unions, it might be other agencies, that type of situation.
Mhm.
And they're all integral parts of this thing to be successful. And so, you know, I think, you know, you have to make some very tough decisions, you know, if it's going to the online capacity or, you know, call centers and that type of situation. It affects how we do the other part of our training, you know, our offices and stuff like that. So I think it's very important that we stay abreast of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you, and you know, very glad for the partnership that we've had working on the task force for over the last year and a half, and we'll continue to. You know, unfortunately, we're still waiting for a lot of clarity from the U.S. Department of Labor, which may never come, by the way, but we're hoping to get some on what exactly it is that they want us to do and will allow us to do in terms of trying to come up with that amount of money in this amount of time frame. So, you know, and don't take me the wrong way. I'm not going. If this was a 5% cut for next federal fiscal year, I wouldn't be complaining about this one bit. I mean, the problem is when it goes back 6 months for money you've already spent, and then you have a very narrow window to recover this. But as Gideon mentioned, I think our focus needs to be on how we're going to provide the best service possible to people go forward, and which is why we've already made a lot of connections between our benefits database and the labor exchange, IllinoisJobLink.com, and we're going to make sure through increasing our work search and other requirements that more and more people are registered, actively engaged in looking for work, and that we can use as a recruitment tool for the WIA system for these job training programs to meet employers' needs.
Good. Greg, got a comment?
No.
Well, I would say this is that you have many challenges faced with you. I mean, even just the online capacity, you know, the duplication of efforts, making sure that we mainstream. And I think it just shows that we're going to have to do more with less. And I think that's what it really comes down to. And the partnership is going to be vital to the success of that, what we have. So going right into it, well, just probably, Jay, you want to talk about the visits as well, and then we'll let Teresa and Bob talk about the visits in Washington, D.C. Jay?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we went out to meet with our congressional delegation and had, I think, a very good meeting with Senator Durbin's office in terms of any of the offices that really get the workforce system and the challenges to it. It's definitely Senator Durbin's office. So we had a very positive conversation with Trevor because unfortunately the delegation wasn't in the week that we were out there. Both Teresa and I were out there for other conferences, and then we're going to meet with our delegation. So we met with a lot of the staff members, chiefs of staff, things of that nature. Great conversation with Senator Durbin's office. Also met with a number of congressional delegation members from both sides of the aisle. Kind of laid out some of the challenges with sequestration and also with the issues we're having with public-private partnerships, and discussed WIA reauthorization. I think on sequestration, you know, the general consensus is it's here to stay over the long term as well, so not just this fiscal year, although there is a hope that the departments may get some more flexibility in terms of how they implement sequestration as opposed to just being a cut that's across the board. You know, they could hopefully be able to target that cut in some areas that don't need the resources as much. But so that a lot of the conversation focused on sequestration. A lot of talk about WIA reauthorization. It definitely looks like that's moving forward in the House. I'm not so sure it's moving forward in the Senate, though. And both the congressional delegation, our House members, were saying that there's a lot of other priorities that they have on their plate, as well as doing the WIA reauthorization. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. The legislation, as currently drafted in the House, would repeal the Wagner-Pizer Act, which is basically all of the funding we receive to run a job board for the entire state, and then also do the job matching component, and would either get rid of those programs or in some cases turn some of that funding over to the local workforce boards. And it would do something similar with the U.S. Department of Labor veterans programs as well. So that's something we're not supportive of at IDES. And I think we're working together to update our congressional delegation on those things, and I've been in touch with the governor's D.C. office a number of times on this issue.
Trace, you want to kind of do a follow-up with that?
No, I agree. Jay, we had some great meetings. and the, you know, the chiefs of staff, I mean, they listened, they were very interested in obviously trying to help with sequestration as much, you know, whatever they could do, but also with the wheel reauthorization. I think what really was helpful was the language that we provided to them. The staffers at least were very, very happy to receive that because it basically said, okay, we need flexibility. What does that mean? Here it is in the legislation. Here's the changes you need to make. So it made their job very easy. And I know we're working to expand that language with, well, yeah. You know,
I apologize. I wasn't able, as you can see, I had a slight accident when I was supposed to be, so I've been at home, and I'm sorry. I did not read it down.
Legislation when you were?
Huh? I didn't have any of that with me. No.
Okay. No, I just want to make the point, and I think it was a very useful tool for all of the staffers and the delegation members. So I think I would encourage us to continue that effort. And then also the side-by-side, Jay, we need to, you know, if we could expand that so we're clear that, you know, some parts of that House bill, you know, we absolutely can't support because of the Wagner-Pizer issues, but, you know, the best bill by far is the Senate bill, like you said, is probably not going anywhere, but you know, which is probably why.
Good bill.
But I think if we can say, okay, this is what's good in this bill, this is what's, you know, good in this bill, we can say, you know, here's the themes that are common to all of them that we support, and here's what, you know, you need to get rid of. So I know, Lisa, you're working on that, and we'll run it by everybody.
Well, I want to compliment the staff because having that language change was very, very helpful from the very beginning, and also from the congressional aspects too as well. You know, talking to staffers, having that piece in hand is very, very important for them to do that. If you don't mind, if we can, maybe just bring up a little bit about we have sent letters to Senator Durbin, and that was a follow-up from our meetings and kind of showing what the models we have. Bob has been helping us with the private business case models to use. That's why we're asking for the template from the private side, because his efforts are making sure that we try to get those individuals, you know, the cases that are working, you know. And as we said, we can take care of the other as it goes along, but that's what their main interest is right now, is how we make this more simplistic, flexibility, and continue to show those type of examples where maybe employer-driven or whatever it takes to make this happen. Senator Kirk, we've been in contact with his staff too. We sent a letter to him as well to follow up with the letter we have. You guys can download it if you want to see a copy of it, but it's important that we still maintain that because, like I said, the House side, I think we're winning some efforts there. I mean, trying to. I mean, I think Congressman Shimkus is an important part of that. Naturally, some of the other new freshmen will be as well. But I think from the Senate side, we definitely need to have Durbin on board because he's going to be carrying the water for us if there is. And I'm just reiterate that we can be the model. Exactly. I mean, I really do. I mean, we really can do the model, and I think, you know, we've done this before when we did the 40% when Sandy was backing me up so hard. Like, yeah, Tommy, go ahead. Yeah, as I was getting crucified out there, but we know it can work. We know it can work, and it's been used in other states, and I think that's exactly what they're looking for as an example. So it's just whether we want to step up and be the challenge to make those type of changes.
If I could also mention, based on John's letter, we've been tracking two other things that are relevant, and that's the Higher Education Act. Number one, because they're now considering on student financial aid eligibility, and right now our working adults don't have good access based on federal law on student financial aid, and then there's a new bill out there, the Wyden-Rubio bill. Tom, in his letter, mentioned a lot of stuff about transparency and data and stuff like that. Well, we have a joint grant with IDS, DCO went together for the workforce development data project. Well, the Wyden-Rubio bill is a major step forward in bringing together the education data and the workforce data all together under a national, and we need that, and that's one of Tom's things in these letters was transparency and stuff like that, and that we're watching the Wyden-Rubio bill. It's got sponsors on both sides. They're kind of negotiating, my understanding right now, they're negotiating what's the best pathway to go on, but that's the vehicle for that other part of Tom's letter.
Yeah, I can't stress the transparency, the accountability. Everyone, we always have to have some type of accountability, how it's going to be done. And sharing the information from the educational part, and here all the partners is going to be an integral part to doing, making sure this thing happens. And I've heard repeatedly from the different staffers and everyone else concerning that. So, I mean, it's a big point for us. Trace, anything on that? How about you want to give us a reauthorization update? You want to give that? Trace?
I thought he did.
Okay.
I think you covered most of it.
He did cover most of it. The only other thing that I would add is on that 803 bill is up for vote today in the House. So, and I'm sure they're going to ram it through because they rammed it through the committee. So 'cause Democrats all got up and walked out. They still voted on it. So.
Did they run?
Yeah, they literally walked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to pass. I just don't think the Senate is even going to take up reauthorization, or it didn't seem like it when we did. So then they're going to pass a partisan bill in the House. The Democrats on the other side won't pass anything, and then we'll just, be back at kind of another continuing resolution that just keeps the funding going, but without any more clarity on the regs.
Right, and the continuing resolution also they Harkin added an amendment to increase the statewide activity funds to 10%.
To 10%, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So where are we at on funding levels then? Basically, is it 5%?
Well, the continuing resolution holds it harmless for the FY12
good.
level.
But we won't know our cut until we get through sequestration.
Right.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, they're doing the sequestration for WIA off the top and then doing the formula allocation after the 5%.
Yeah. Right.
So we have no idea how much. I mean, it's based on the unemployment rates. And
Well, maybe you'll get to 7% then.
we could actually.
Right. Well, any little shiny light may be good. I don't know.
Okay, so that seems to be the update. Let's go talk about the impact in workforce programs. We had a little update from IDS concerning. Bob, you want to talk about higher education because, we went a little bit of detail about the Pell Grants and the application of it.
I mentioned a little
student
bit,
loans.
But it's basically a lot of our clients coming in the workforce system are working adults, and many of them are not going to be attending full-time the way we've normally thought about it. Well, historically, they face barriers in getting Pell Grant financing. Well, then WIA is backfilling, and WIA is supposed to be a supplement, like give some support services on top of Pell Grant funds or whatever. And even for working adults like dislocated workers, many times can't do the necessary participation levels necessary to qualify. So we're watching many of these advocates that we deal with, like CLASP and others, are trying to look at HEA to expand access to working adults. We have a dog in that fight in the sense that if we can get that done, which is the mothership of funding, then we can maybe stretch our money better into these innovative public-private partnerships with employers and spend our money that way and not have to backfill as much because of our working adults. But again, that's HEA. And then I mentioned the Wyden-Rubio bill. There's a bunch of bills. Reuben Whitey has the most legs to it right now. Is that also this, we have again, like I mentioned, we have a joint grant with Employment Security and DCO have a joint grant on data, longitudinal data. Well, the problem is we're running into so many roadblocks. Even $1 million sounds like a lot to build systems, but you need a national kind of infrastructure. So if that came through, that would help out tremendously. But right now it's a bill of like 3 pages. It's just a framework. There's no detail in it. And they're just kind of floating at this point. So those are the 2 areas in higher education related that are relevant to us.
Yeah, Bob, the other problem starting to happen frequently is even though we have to deal with the Pell Grants, which, as you said, they got to have a number of hours.
Exactly.
But the other challenge we're facing is that the feds are getting so tough on direct government student loans.
Yeah.
And many of us have just pretty well been forced to drop out of that. Now they can get the loan supplementally through banks and whatever, and we work with them very hard. But I guess if I was to determine why this all came down to some of the extremely expensive proprietary schools, I think government felt were taking advantage of students. It sure wasn't like the community college system that charges maybe $3,000 a year for the student. But a lot of I ran through some of the numbers a few weeks ago, and one of the problems we even have is
that many of the non-traditional students coming back are the ones that do have trouble paying back their loans.
Exactly.
So
Actually,
it's a
if
vicious circle.
you look at the rising default rates in the public sector, it's largely our people we deal with in workforce that are even going to a community college or a lower cost university, even public university, and they're reaching default rates that are rising, even for small amounts of money. And some colleges around the country now are reducing enrollments to improve their retention rates.
Right.
And they're dropping enrollments.
And it is really a problem. I know for us it's a problem.
And so what we have worry in our side is that if access goes down because of this, it's a problem. In the White-Rubio bill, they're even talking about adjusted, like we used to do adjusted models in JTBA. It's adjusted models based upon the risk that students bring in. So if you're dealing with a lot of high-risk students, they want to take that into account. So if you not hold harmless, but it's basically saying is if you're bringing in a bunch of people, just like we used to do in JTBA, if you bring a bunch of people that have multiple barriers and all that, we want to take that into account when we deal with your...
Here's the problem. It's I mean, there's severe penalty for the colleges. In fact, if you go over the 30% mark, we could possibly lose our Pell Grants, but most of us would just close our doors.
Yeah.
That's just about it.
Is all that debate in the HEA is relevant to workforce. Because if that sucker goes wrong, we have a big impact on the clients we serve.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah.
And for a lot of the community college, that's the mother, I mean, we is nice, but the mother load's on the student financial aid.
It is.
And then that would free up a lot of dollars in the WIA side for
Well, exactly. And that's, we leverage those Pell Grants and those, not so much loans, but Pell Grants with all of our clients.
But if they change Pell Grant policy, we could put more of our money into support services and less into tuition itself.
Right.
So what I like about their debating now is making Pell Grant more usable by part-time working adults who meet low-income criteria. If we can get more of them covered under Pell, then we can use our local WIA funds for other things, OJTs, support services, things that can't be done through Pell Grant. Right now, it could, but the other thing could happen is the Pell Grant get worse. And all of a sudden, we're filling a hole.
Well, and again, when we get our Workforce Innovation Grant,
I think he said it before, didn't he?
he might have. I don't know. He's old. He forgets. But the problem should be solved. Don't give up your day job. You know, you're absolutely right, because if we do work on a model where we're bringing OJT and some other services to those folks who graduate to get them into a job, because we got a lot of folks who graduate, and unfortunately, there's something else going on with them. They can't seem to locate a job in that field, and that's a horrible thing to report to a board.
Yeah.
You know, okay, we trained 25 people in welding, and 3 got a job welding, and the rest are cutting scrap metal at their dad's shop or something, you know.
Exactly.
So,
no, but also on top of that, if you had more flexibility with your locals, so you could put incumbent in there, you could put OJTs, class size programs, you could do all this flexible stuff locally, because you didn't have to backfill over here. That's what we're thinking. That's why we had the HEA plus WIA reauthorization gets the solution we want.
Making Pell more flexible would solve a lot of problems, not only for the federal government too.
Well, think about all of our people who are in non-credit programming on the WIA side. I mean, and a lot of our people need the flexibility you can provide to the non-credit side better than the for credit, but we can't. We lose that mechanisms when we get that flexibility on the non-credit. We lose the funding.
Oh yeah. Exactly. You won't stop.
But and that's a good thing to point out is maybe as a follow-up letter to Durbin from Tom's letter. This is a good start of, you know, really bringing WIA into the other funding streams.
Yeah.
And then, you know, with fear of repeating myself, but that's the other thing we need to talk about is whether it's in education or labor, getting a bill that finally gets out there, but then having it rewritten in the rules and regs that hamper us just as if it had been in the bill.
Right.
So, and I think, DOL has some history of getting slapped.
Part of education, the same issue on student Pell grants and loans,
Very
same
good
issue
point.
that we have with DOL on the same topic. Because a lot of that stuff is coming through
It's actually a really good
regulatory.
idea to put into our, we should put that into our talking points.
And we did it while we were out there
Yeah.
because we thought that was as important as
Well, and
anything.
we might put it in the table too, if we could come up with some language that we want to add in, because I know there's a couple of bills that they would write in legislation that DOL can't, or your governing agency can't.
Would it be possible for our educational partners, AGA is now holding hearings right now, they're going to start in June. I was wondering if our education side of our partnership here could, when they testify on that, address that point with regard to working adults, part-time working adults?
I think there wouldn't be, I know, a community college in the state that wouldn't be for that.
But is there any way to reach out to our delegation during the AGA process?
Oh, definitely so,
yeah.
sure.
Oh, yeah.
Because that'd be very timely, because now it looks like, because I thought WIA was going to come fast, and now it's not. Now AGA is going to be setting up in June. This may be parallel
That's
effort.
important.
Especially with that language,
I
and
put a
make
star
sure
by
we get this to staffers, give examples of why it go about this kind of
Thank
sort
you.
of work. That's actually who's going to tell the legislator how to do that.
Like golf, if you get retired.
That'd be a good idea. Do we have anything else? Yvonne, do you have anything to offer?
Once again, I apologize for being late, but I was going to go back. I have been working on trying to get, identify colleges in the appropriate districts to tap into and to get success stories from them. Obviously, you don't have any from me yet, but I am working on it. I have talked to people, put stuff out there, but this, we've got multiple colleges in multiple congressional districts and trying to figure out which is the lead college in that district, not getting the other, Bob, you understand this, not getting the other colleges upset because I called that college because they have a bigger percentage of their college in that congressional district. They all can't be at the meeting trying to figure out which one to call, which one to ask for the story. I'm sorry, Lisa, I have been working on it, but if
You know, sooner or later you make somebody mad. That's
Yeah,
all you can do
I
is
usually
get it
do.
done. That's all you
But
can
most
do.
of our success stories do include the colleges.
Yeah,
I
I understand that, but I meant, I was trying to get some that the college identified, and then figure out who from the college could participate.
And most of ours, those stories do go along, right?
Yes,
with-
they do.
With the WIA program and
Right,
things
right.
we have done
Yeah.
together, so that's.
Yeah, a lot of the OJT, a lot of,
Yes.
like the People's Gas is a perfect example. City College.
Okay, very good. Anybody online would like to make any comments or anything else? Phil, are you still there, sir? Dustin? It must not be. Jay?
I think he signed off.
Everybody signed off. Good, well, good. We can just come down to us now. One thing I do want to say, I did have a meeting with Jack Lavin, kind of gave him up to date on exactly what our progress and what we're doing with the legislative task force. I was rather surprised he was aware of what we were doing. I think that a couple things I'm very happy with. I think Adam's going to do a very good job as our new director of DCO. He seems to be wanting to get involved with the WE board. I want to also say that we got some new appointments kind of through on the governor's office. So,
You are a miracle.
yeah. So we got some
You mean
people.
they're actually being appointed?
Yeah, they already have. Actually, they have.
But when did you, sign?
No, Terry
My
got
boss, my young boss.
Right.
Yeah, he got it.
But it was amazing, it was like a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got done quick.
So, yeah, basically, so, we are getting those things done, so the appointments are getting done. I also want to bring up, and I'll give the legislative update today at the, regular, board meeting, but more importantly, that, maybe just a real brief overview on the healthcare task force and the reasons why we're looking at that as an action thing to get that thing started out. Maybe it's of an interest. Maybe we can wait till the board. Yeah.
Sure, we're working with the Department of Public Health and the Governor's Office for the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. There's going to be obviously huge needs for healthcare professionals to increase to help with the care costs of the new enrolled insured. So we are going to reconvene the healthcare task force of the IWIB to kind of do an updated, where are we now, where are the gaps in training, and how can we help to increase training opportunities at all levels of the healthcare system. And then specifically looking at building a curriculum for the community healthcare workers. It's an entry-level position similar to the CNA, but then also create a pathway for those workers to...
What other type of workers are you looking for besides the CNA on that? Are you identifying?
Community health worker.
Community healthcare worker, yeah.
I mean, it's an actual title.
It's an actual, it is an actual title.
It's a public health.
Yeah, it's a preventative type of field where you would work with your peers and or just to kind of public outreach and prevention of, healthcare, diabetes, high blood pressure.
All the new healthcare reform incentives are, we were originally focused on filling RN shortages in acute care facilities, and that was the nurse shortage early on. Yep. Well, that sucker's coming to, it's in Chicago, they're pretty full up, I don't know, but we kind of plugged along that pretty well. Now the issue is, if anybody under the Medicaid reform, if you have readmittance into acute care facility, you're going to get dinged. So now they're going to push it all out into community-based care, preventative, like Teresa says, chronic care management. And those community health workers are the new paraprofessionals that are going to be front line in doing all that.
What type of curriculum or what type of length would the training program be for these?
It's a certificate type of program.
Yeah.
We're looking. I think California has a good model, and Stephen Conyers most hopefully will be named as chair. He's the chief of staff over at DPH. And he's looking at some curriculum.
But that would have a big implication for your CNA programming at your community college?
Yeah, so we obviously will be looking to you guys to help with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Well, I'm just really happy. It's going to be an active committee, and it's actually going to start doing some addressing rather than just meeting once every 3 months. They're actually going to try to be an active committee and to make some things happen.
But I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's going to be a way to re-engage our employer community on the healthcare side, because many of our big hospital chains are now part of these bigger systems, Indian systems.
Right.
That deal everything with community care all the way to acute care.
Right.
And now they're rethinking their staffing mix.
Exactly.
And they're putting nurses out into the field with these community health care workers. So it's also a different role for nurses.
There'd be some demand on that.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. So I mean, that's one of the ways we're going to look at it. I think it's great if we're putting it up, but anyway, we will have the meeting day. Adam will be there.
Tom, can I add one thing on that committee?
Sure.
Sure. So we've been working with the governor's office and the folks that are implementing this, and they're going to be including a lot of those the postings for all these positions in Illinois Job Link. So we look forward to working on that with all of you to make sure we got a good delivery system to get these people trained and hired up.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you guys hopefully will be part of the. I mean, you're on. I mean, there's two committees. One is with the governor's office, in that they're doing more of an immediate type of response, and then we're doing the longer term. Okay, where are we going to be?
Right.
How to get these positions. So I think our both agencies are hopefully will be on this one, Jay, and then also representing the governor's office initiative.
Great.
Well, good. So okay. Yeah, Jay, I just want to make sure. The bottom line is that we're going to take an active look at this, and the board with the new appointments, we're keeping the private side on there, and that's one of the things that we want to make sure we keep the public-private partnership in. Jack was very, very excited about the appointments we were doing and how we were going about it. I think Adam's going to do a very, very sharp individual. I think he's going to do some good things. And the only thing I'm going to ask one other addition to this committee, and it's Andrew. He's going to help me out with the legislative process. He's a student of administration, of actually laws and from the federal side and the state side. So with this committee, I'm going to ask him to come to our next meetings. Okay? Thank you.
Great.
Yes, you're Andrew.
Oh, he was an
He's our Andrew. What is it?
Wait, our Andrew.
It's all about you again. It's our Andrew.
Yeah. Wait, we don't get to share or what?
We all take credit for Andrew. He's the governor one.
He's a very sharp individual, and he actually, I don't know what he does on Saturday nights, but he studies this stuff. So he's a good student of what we need.
Get over that.
Yeah, I know that. We might as well take advantage of what we can, Dave. You know how that is. Remember when you were young?
Yeah, no, I don't.
He eats, sleeps, and breathes this stuff.
The legislative process, he really does.
Oh, my God.
So,
I got a question though. What we're hearing from one of the larger hospital systems is medical coding. They've got posters up all over their facilities asking their existing staff to take the training. And in this case, in our area, St. Louis Community College has worked out a program But in meeting with a couple of the larger systems, they say that's going to be a tremendous need moving forward. That the Healthcare Act will require people to have a whole new set of skills. And I looked at the curriculum. I mean, these folks got to know anatomy. They have to know biology. They have to get to that level. I mean, these are not. If somebody's looking up a code on a piece of paper.
Also, our new healthcare, we have the learning exchanges, the healthcare one. You look at the career pathway stuff inside that, it's got that, and also there's another certification being brought up by the IT industry, which is for IT professionals working in healthcare environments to work with professional coding people. So there's two sides here. One is your IT with health, and the other one is you're getting more into electronic healthcare records as professionals.
Yes.
And if you look in our stuff on the learning exchange, it's got both.
And the other thing, there's national certification for those folks. I mean, this is not.
But there's national certification for both.
Both.
You know, the IT and the medical.
And the medical's always been there.
Yeah, the medical.
Now there's stronger electronic medical records in there. But now there's a new certification that's also listed that is for IT professionals who are supporting the IT data infrastructure that's going to eventually go out into communities, not just inside the hospital. It's going to be on a network. So that's a new certification.
You know, she told an interesting story, the director of education for BJC system, that they had a bunch of the physicians around the table. They were talking about this, and I guess under the act, there are 8 different forms of sutures. And the surgeon said, I don't even know if I can sew people up 8 different ways. But you have to be able to separate those codes, and that code has a cost associated with one of the 8 now. So if it's, I don't know, internal suturing as opposed to something else.
If you watch Body Approved, you would know that.
What?
If you watch Body Approved, you would know that.
Is that on like at 5 o'clock? Because I'm in bed by 8.
You'll have to DVR it.
Oh, there we go. Okay, DVR. All right.
You know what, though, can I?
We'll put them on a DVD for you.
Thank
There
you.
you go.
How about 8-track tape?
Is there some way that we can tie?
Isn't the purpose to the
This
patient
is
to be more accurate?
Well, Bob needs to listen.
It's a good thing.
Bob, this is really a question for you. Is there some way to tie what's going on with the Affordable Care Act for the flexibility that we need in our training program?
I think it would be
complicated. Well, you're hurting, my head hurt now.
We're talking.
Well, that's a good point, though, is an example of a national
Exactly.
and how that flexibility
Actually, we
would help us
could.
meet.
You're right, because a lot of this stuff in your medical coding is going to be upgrading existing workers.
Oh, very good idea. Become a worker.
And also cross-training people.
Right.
That are another related, because I think a lot of these community health care people are going to be upgraded, cross-trained CNA types.
Well, and they are perversion because they'll need these new skills to keep their job, right?
Right, well, yeah, so I mean, they're only letting us do 20% for incumbent worker training, and with this new Affordable Health Care Act, especially in healthcare, we might need more.
Yeah, no, I'm seeing your point now, I'm sorry.
Oh my God, I can't believe I
got
left.
it immediately.
You can go to sleep now, Liz is just gonna.
I know,
You can call me Mini-Me now.
I think we've gone off.
All right, so we're going to get back on this. Any other questions pertaining to the legislative task?